Good morning, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of our RANT series. Today, by popular demand, we're going to take a look at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2020 nominations list. Now, I'd said back a bunch of months ago that I was probably not going to do any more of these Rock and Roll Hall of Fame either inductee or nomination shows, because every time I do it, I get like all these people who don't watch our channel who come on and, defending rap and calling me an old dinosaur and, blah, 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 blah. And it's just, so I was like, you know what, I'm probably going to keep my opinions on this to myself. But we've had so many people in the last 24 hours ask me, Pete, you got to do a show, you got to do a show, you got to do a show. Basically because the nomination list is filled with some really strong candidates this year and some bands that inexplicably have been snubbed for years. So I said, what the fuck? I'm going to do it. All right. Now, granted, let's go in with the kind of realization that myself, like I'm sure plenty of you, think that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is pretty much a load of BS. All right. They kind of lost a lot of credibility over the last decade or two, inducting a lot of acts that, quite frankly, aren't anything close to being rock and roll, but it is what it is, right? I still think, as much as a sham as it is, I still think that there's some kind of prestige in being inducted. It's just a way of honoring legacy, and you know my criteria for bands that should get in. It's longevity, it's album sales, it's charting singles, it's concert attendance, ticket sales, it's influence. It's kind of all those things wrapped up, and I think we've got a lot of bands that still have been, ignored to this day. I mean, God, right off the top of my head, no Jethro Tull again this year, no Styx, no Kansas. The list, no Iron Maiden, the Scorpions. The list goes on and on and on. Again, if you're not someone who follows, classic rock, hard rock, or metal, you might be thinking, well, who cares about those bands? Well, you know what? A lot of us do, but that's an argument for another time. Let's kind of run down the list here. So, first of all, the Doobie Brothers. Let me run down the list first, and then we'll go into each one. So, Doobie Brothers, Judas Priest once again, Soundgarden for the first time. Who else we have here? Motorhead. Interesting choice. I'm all for it. Pat Benatar, Dave Matthews Band, Depeche Mode, the MC5, Nine Inch Nails, Todd Rundgren, T-Rex, Thin Lizzy, Whitney Houston, Kraftwerk, The Notorious Big, and Rufus featuring Chaka Khan. Okay, the ones making their first appearances ever are Motorhead, Dave Matthews, T-Rex, and Thin Lizzy. Okay, so let's go down the list. All right, we'll do one at a time. First of all, the Doobie Brothers. I really have a hard time understanding how the Doobie Brothers have been up for induction since the mid-'90s, and here we are at going to be 2020, and they're not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, come on. Look at all those top-selling albums. I mean, look at all those songs, right? Listen to the music. Long Train Running, What a Fool Believes, Minute by Minute, Black Water. I mean, the list goes on and on. Top-selling songs, legendary songs. All right, all the great tours. The band is still going strong. I mean, such an influence to so many kind of California acts, as well as just kind of the more rootsier bands who kind of, dabble in the folk and the hard rock and all that pop music. I mean, come on, people. It's the biggest no-brainer on this entire list. So they have to get in. Judas Priest, okay, they were up for induction 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? Didn't make it in. They weren't on last year's ballot, and here they are again. Something like that. They're all getting muddled after a while. Another no-brainer. Basically one of the inventors of heavy metal as we know it, right? Big selling band, still going strong, tours at the yin-yang. The influence is undeniable. It's a no-brainer, folks. Why Iron Maiden is not on this ballot, too, is beyond me. But we couldn't quite get them in the last time. They got to get in this time. Soundgarden, a more recent band. I have always felt, I still feel this way. I know a lot of people out there don't agree with me, and that's totally cool. You're entitled to your opinion. But I feel that we've got to get some of these legacy acts in first before we start letting in bands that debuted in the late 80s or the 90s. I mean, for crying out loud, we got, Guns N' Roses and, all these other, Nirvana and Stone Temple Pilots and Soundgarden and, all these bands and artists who kind of really came to prominence in the 90s who are getting in way before, acts like the two we just talked about. And I get that those artists were big in the 90s and on, but it's just like those other artists were big for decades prior. So a minor quibble, all right, but I get it. Soundgarden, why not? All right, highly influential band, one of the biggest bands of the 90s. Again, kind of, and for my money, they kind of tried to take that 70s, early 80s, heavy rock and metal sound, a little blending of Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin and some punk vibes, all right, for the 90s. Sure, why not? All right, I'm all for it. Let's go down the rest of the list. Motorhead. I love Motorhead. Everybody loves Motorhead. All right. Are they Hall of Fame worthy? Again, the influence is undeniable, right? Motorhead were never a huge band. Huge to metalheads, yes. Were they ever a mainstream band? No. Were they ever like a top 10 selling band? No. Were they ever like a huge concert draw? No. They're one of the most popular cult acts on the metal scene you'll ever find. Do I think personally they belong in there? Yes. Do I think they're going to get voted in? I don't think so. And that's just me being realistic. I wish they would. Hell yeah. But then I heard, and again, this is another crazy thing about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, that if they were to get inducted, the three that would get inducted would be Fast Eddie, Lemmy, and Filthy. Okay, which that's the classic original lineup. Well, close to the original lineup. But those are the ones that did, obviously Bomber and Overkill and Iron Fist and all those classic Motorhead albums, easily their best albums. But then you got guys, like Phil Campbell. Okay, and Mickey D. Okay, and Wurzel, guys that played in the band for ages after Fast Eddie left, who are not getting recognized for their contributions, and that kind of rubs me the wrong way. I mean, I know the Hall has been doing this for years. They've been snubbing, guys who have been in these bands for decades but weren't part of that original popular run or that classic lineup, and they get snubbed and they don't get inducted. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous because, quite frankly, the right thing to do if Motorhead gets inducted is you got to have those guys inducted with them so they can go up and accept the award because the original trio are gone. They're all dead. So I don't understand that at all, but hey, it's all politics, I guess. Pat Benatar. Yeah, Pat Benatar should have been in years ago. Quite frankly, the fact that Joan Jett got in before Pat Benatar to me is an absolute crime. I know Joan Jett had, 2 or 3 really big hits. Did she write any of them? Pat Benatar was a top-selling, touring musician, singer for ages. Okay? I mean, look at that run of hers from like the late 70s through the early 90s. Look at all those like great songs. All right? Whether it's the great hard rock stuff or the more pop-related stuff, then she moved into kind of more like kind of mellow, jazzy sort of thing. I mean, what a career she's had. So why is it taking this long? Absolutely, I think Pat Benatar should be in. Dave Matthews Band. I'm personally not a big fan of Dave Matthews Band. I don't dislike him. His music hasn't done a lot for me, but guy's been on top of the world for a long time, and people love the Dave Matthews Band. Other musicians love the Dave Matthews Band. Top selling artists throughout. You look at the last 20, 25 years, man, that guy's been up there. Okay, again, a more newer act. Personally, I feel some of the older legacy bands should get in first, but I'm not denying Dave Matthews and his impact on the music scene over the last couple decades. I'm not going to argue it. All right. Depeche Mode. Depeche Mode should have been in a long time ago. Again, I'm not much of a fan of their music, but come on. Undeniable, that influence. Big selling band, too. The MC5. They've been nominated before. They didn't make it in. My opinion already. I think the MC5 were hugely influential on the punk scene. Probably, arguably, the first punk band, along with Iggy Pop and the Stooges. Okay. But, they had that one big album. And really wasn't even that big. Right? Kick Out the Jams. A great album. A groundbreaking album. Those other albums, they're okay. One of them's pretty decent. Another one's not good at all, in my opinion. Do we induct a band on one album? You know what, if you're going to do it to Guns N' Roses, because quite frankly, Guns N' Roses, their never-ending popularity is due to Appetite for Destruction, right? Can the MC5 get in based on Kick Out the Jams? Hey, if we've done it before, do it again, all right? It's arguable that we have punk rock if not for that band. 9 Inch Nails, I never got at 9 Inch Nails. Again, obviously there's a lot of people out there who disagree with me. They didn't get in last time. In fact, it wasn't even, if you looked at kind of the voting leading up, I was surprised that they weren't getting more attention, because I know 9 Inch Nails has been really popular with a lot of people, since the 90s. So do they belong? I don't know. You know what? I don't know enough about the band to really, I just know that what I've heard over the years hasn't really done much for me. I'm going to just skip an opinion on that, because I know anything I say is going to get roasted, so whatever. Todd Rundgren. I wanted Todd Rundgren in last time around. Okay, I think that his both his influence as a producer, as a member of Utopia, as well as his solo career, hugely influential. He's had so much success. Maybe not as much a mainstream name as a lot of these, but I mean, Jesus, look at all the stuff he did in the 70s and the 80s. Tons of top 10 hits. Okay, produced some of the biggest albums of all time. Okay, I'd put Todd in. All right. T-Rex. Come on. Is that even a question? T-Rex should definitely be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, huge band, hugely influential, one of the biggest glam bands ever. Okay, Mr. Boland was another one of those kind of musical geniuses, right? Guy could write a hook, man, and that band was a lot of fun, right? Thin Lizzy, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, granted. I know people here in the U.S. are probably thinking, well, Thin Lizzy was never really big here. Well, you know what? They had that one big hit, The Boys Are Back in Town. That was their, that's all that most people, common man knows about Thin Lizzy is, oh yeah, didn't they do that Boys Are Back in Town? So much more than that. I think if you ask almost any young or aspiring band who plays in the hard rock realm owes something to Thin Lizzy. Okay, you talk to anybody who's involved in music, who plays in bands, okay, especially guitar-oriented bands, Thin Lizzy is a huge influence. Their use of the twin guitar harmonies, they may not have been the first band, they weren't. You had Wishbone Ash and the Allman Brothers that were doing it ahead of them, okay. You had Judas Priest also doing it, but I mean, God, Thin Lizzy made it cool. Thin Lizzy used twin guitar harmonies, okay, and hard rock and even more melodic songs, and made it the centerpiece of their sound. So many bands have done it in their wake. All right, Thin Lizzy absolutely need to be in. Phil Lynott, what a great songwriter, bass player and singer. Okay, it's a no-brainer, guys. No-brainer. What else? Whitney Houston. I mean, the problem is, I'm not denying. I mean, Whitney Houston is was a tremendously successful mega artist. Okay, on the R&B and pop scene. All right, influenced so many other singers in her wake. Okay, personally, it's not rock and roll. However, if the Hall of Fame is going to induct other R&B singers or pop singers, which they've done aplenty, I don't see why they don't bring in Whitney Houston. I'm not saying I agree with it, okay, because like I said, it ain't rock and roll. But I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet. I mean, that's kind of my surprise there, because it just follows a pattern, right? I mean, that's so. Kraftwerk, I mentioned last time, I don't really know a hell of a lot about Kraftwerk. I know highly influential on the electronic music scene. They didn't make it in last time. I know a lot of people on the last video I did. I said I wouldn't pick them. So many people were against what I said, and blah blah blah. Okay, well, you know what? Maybe because I'm not a fan and I'm not overly familiar with their music, I really can't make a judgment on this one. So I'm not going to. Plenty of people told me that they should be in, that they, whatever. So I'm not going to say anything more on that. Notorious Big, or B.I.G., whatever the hell you want to call it. Sorry. Rap doesn't belong in this category, as far as I'm concerned. And Rufus featuring Chaka Khan, talented group there. Again, it ain't rock and roll, but part of that kind of 70s funk and R&B and soul scene. Pretty big act. I don't know. Again, I'm not knocking them because I heard plenty of stuff by them, and it's all good. It ain't really rock and roll. So okay, so now we get down to how many the top 5 artists. Is that how it is? The top 5? All right. Well, I'm going to vote for my top 5. All right. I'm going to be real selfish here. All right. So Doobie Brothers, Judas Priest, Thin Lizzy, Pat Benatar. It's either between Motorhead and Todd Rundgren. God, I hate to vote against Todd. I mean, you know what? The selfish part of me, here's what I'm going to do. Those are my top 4, without a doubt, okay? The selfish part of me wants Motorhead in, because I think that would be royally cool. The realist in me says Todd Rundgren, okay? So that's what I'm going to do. So my 4 definite picks, my wild card pick is Motorhead. My realistic gut tells me pick would be Todd Rundgren, okay? That's who I'm picking. But you know what? There's bands on here that will get in. All right, you know what? If it wasn't for a couple of these acts that were thrown in, I would have easily said Soundgarden. All right, T-Rex, MC5, Dave Matthews, all deserving, right? Depeche Mode, but I think those are my choices. All right, so I'm going to go on record: Doobie Brothers, Judas Priest, Soundgarden, Pat Benatar, and either Motorhead or Todd Rundgren as my number 5. Okay, I think any of those would be awesome. We'll see what happens, right? When does, I guess, January 10th, the online voting ends. So I guess everybody should go online and vote as many times as you can. I don't know how much it matters. I don't know how it all works behind the scenes. But we'll see. Like I said, I think probably one of the better list of nominees we've seen in a while. Again, it doesn't mean shit, but whatever. Hopefully sometime in the next couple of years we will see like Boston and Styx and Kansas and Jethro Tull and Iron Maiden and the Scorpions. For fuck's sake, how about Rainbow, that's kind of a pipe dream there, but you never know. Bad Company, right? How about Bad Company? It is a crime that Paul Rodgers is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It is a crime. He's got, whether it be with Bad Company or free, I don't give a shit. Paul Rodgers needs to be in, all right? So there you have it. That's my rant for today. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2020 nomination list. Let us know who you think should be the 5 that you would vote in, okay? All right, and we'll see what happens, all right? This is on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Of course, we are on YouTube every damn day. Stay tuned. Classic Live album more coming right up. See you.